Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, awesome. Hi, everyone. It's good to see you back at session 2 of the advanced crawl. So the first activity that we're going to do to start off class today is going to be to review some of those journal entries that you guys filled out or that we had you fill out. You definitely don't have to tell us everything in that journal entry, but if you just have like a couple examples or situations where maybe somebody asked you to go out, or maybe you wanted to have a drink, or if you don't have anything really, tell us about a fun thing that you did last week. Whoever wants to start.
Sure, I'll go ahead. It would have been last Friday. A friend of mine came up, and originally we were going to meet at around 3 p.m. and I didn't expect us to drink at all, but he was a little bit late and he ended up coming up around 7. And then basically we just went out to get something to eat, but that turned into a lot more of a drinking experience than I expected. And it was a little bit tough, but I only had 2 drinks, and it wasn't like I didn't have any troubles getting home or anything like that. I didn't, so yeah.
Right. Awesome. Well, it sounds like you did a good job keeping it to a minimum. Was your friend from out of town, or have you not seen him for a while or anything like that?
Just not too far out of town, from over by Effingham, but he doesn't get up here much. He's busy, he works a lot, and really it was just kind of we just went to go grab something to eat because we were both hungry, and it just kind of turned into that accidentally, honestly. But if I wasn't concerned about it, I think it could have gotten a lot more intense.
Right. All right. Well, Cynthia, do you want to go next?
I didn't really do anything fun last week. It was kind of a bad week, and I went home, and it was honestly the first time I've had alcohol in like 6 months. So we had like mimosas. So yeah, but yeah, it was just because it was a rough week though. So
yeah, is school stressing you out or anything? Is that why?
School and my aunt died. So.
Oh no, I'm sorry, Cynthia. Oh, that's so hard. Okay. Emily?
Well, I guess first of all, I want to say I'm really sorry for your loss. We're all here for you. You know, we're all a family. I guess last week, I don't think I really drank at all. I guess I just kind of avoided it the whole time. I didn't really have any stressors or anything. I guess maybe this kind of helped, like, you know, like I can avoid it. It is something that can be done. So, yeah.
Right. Well, thank you all for sharing that with us and your experiences. So basically what we do from here each session is kind of like relate reasons to why we did have a drink or maybe didn't have a drink. So as mentioned, like a couple casual situations, which are totally fine. Sounds like you just had a couple drinks to relax, and that's basically it, and it didn't get too much out of hand. And then Emily, you didn't drink at all, so that's totally fine too. That's awesome that you're keeping note of that. And sounds like everyone kind of did keep this class in the back of their head maybe, or just thinking to try to keep their numbers down whenever they did have a drink. So that's really awesome. I am going to ask though, does anybody have any situations where, I know that you didn't express that in this past week, but just in general, like we had mentioned high risk situations before, where like what leads you to want to drink, but like are there any situations like you have a test this week, so to celebrate your results you go have a drink, or I hang out with X, Y, and Z friends and they're always drinking, so I'm just gonna have a drink anytime I hang out with them because that's just like a pattern. Can anybody think of any of those high risk situations?
Like I said in my example, and like you said, I think certain friends, not necessarily that I feel like anytime we're hanging out we need to drink, but if they are drinking when we're hanging out, I definitely feel, almost obligated or at least awkward if I'm not drinking.
Right.
With them.
Yeah, that's a really great example, especially with the friends and specific people. Does anybody else have one?
I guess mine's kind of like Paul's. When I'm around certain friends, like they tend to do it, so then I tend to join in. Um, but I guess I was the one kind of initiated, like for graduation, like I want a party, and like so people are like, you want like this kind of party or that kind of party, and I'm like, I'm not a big drinker, so like I'm just I just want to celebrate with my friends, but some people are like they want alcohol, so like do you provide it in that situation? Like what? Yeah,
Mm.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's really a great example. Celebrating, certain things. A lot of times people have drinks, especially with graduation, because that's a super big deal. Cynthia, did you have anything?
Yeah, so usually like my friends aren't really pressury when it comes to that. Like at parties, they know I don't really drink or anything. But when I go home, it's usually like for a holiday. So like
Mhm.
my sisters are a lot older than me, and they're always like, "Oh, try this wine that I have." And they're always more like wanting us to drink with them. But
Right. Yeah, family events and holidays, other big reasons to celebrate as well. So that's definitely a pattern in here. So I am just going to read the beginning of the session two, or it's called Strategies for Change, essentially. It is on page 11 of the booklet. You don't have to open up right now if you don't want to, but the next activity is going to be on page 12. So if you want to get that open while I just like read the main part of what we're going to be doing. So obviously, it is an important step to changing your behavior, having strategies for change in alcohol use and identifying certain situations. And so we do just want to kind of keep control of that and understand what does trigger us specifically. So these are going to be called, as spoke about before, high risk situations. Are there specific times, places, situations that you do use alcohol, which we all just talked about? And then when you are in those situations, you more than likely do have a stronger desire because those are your triggers that you have listed. So cravings rarely last for more than like 30 to 60 minutes if you are in those situations. But sometimes like during that period where you're trying to think of whether you're going to drink or not in those situations, it can be a little uncomfortable, like going back and forth in your head, like, what am I going to do? But they are usually not usually random. It's usually in those situations where it does trigger you. Then just a few questions that we are going to get into during this session is going to be, do you crave alcohol ever? You already mentioned high risk triggers or situations. And then what experiences were you in whenever you did have a craving or whenever you were going back and forth in your head about, do I have a drink? Do I have 2 drinks? Do I have 5 drinks? Like, what were you thinking during that time? Just kind of like figuring out how our bodies think in those situations. Um, and that's basically what this whole session is about. So the activity on page 12 is going to be just listing some of those triggers and high risk situations. So we've talked about it now, so this should be pretty easy to get some things written down. There's 2 sections. So it's going to be the internal and then the external. So there's a couple examples on there. So internal is going to be like stress, anger, boredom, and then external is, being offered alcohol whenever you get home from work. It's something that you just want to do. Hang out with your friends or family, things like that we just talked about are all great ones to write down. So I am just going to have you guys fill out that chart really quick for us. And then we're going to talk about it real briefly since we did give some examples already. And whenever you do begin to share your examples, if you have any specifically relating to like a time whenever you were craving them, that will really help us take it into the next activity. So if you do have any of those that you could talk about just briefly about times you were craving alcohol or having to really go back and forth on what you should do in a situation, those would be great examples. All right. Does everybody have something written down? And if you do, whoever is ready can go ahead.
So for the internal ones, I put, well, like they already gave stress. Stress is a big one, or like being sad, or just like being happy too. It's like either or. So like if you're with your friends and like celebrating something, and external, be like if you see something really good at a restaurant, like if my friend orders a drink and then I'm like, that looks good, like I'll try that. Or if I'm at home or with my friends and they offer me something, like I kind of just take it and like sip at it. But
yeah, those are all really great ones. I like the example of seeing a friend order a drink and you think that it looks good. I've never really thought about that as one before, but that's a really good one.
For the internal, I I also had stress as a big one, but anxiety as well. Threw that in there, and mostly just things that other people have said. Boredom, of course, but it's already listed. And then for external, not so much lately because of COVID, but events. Like if I go to a concert or anything like that, I kind of feel out of place if I won't have a drink. Holidays, family situations like that. And then, like I said before, just situations with friends when they're drinking.
Mm-hmm. I like that you said, I don't like that you said it, but the word out of place is a really good way to put it, I guess, in the situation is just feeling a little uncomfortable or out of place. So that was a nice word to explain.
I've never really experienced any like pressure to drink. It's just kind of that I feel like that's what I've always done in these situations. So it's strange.
Right. Yeah. Emily?
I guess, can you guys hear that? There's like a lot of cars outside. Okay, so for internal ones, I had like when I'm happy and I'm celebrating, or like if I had a really long day, like I'm tired and I just want like that nightcap to really knock me out. And then for external, I guess I have parties and like celebrations because like I guess my family always had like, those coolers full of beer and stuff at parties and gatherings, and yeah, that's what I think about. And then like drinking games at like when we're hanging out with friends, like someone always suggests a drinking game and like half of us are like, ugh, and half of us are like, oh my god, yes. So it's just, I don't know. Drinking games, a big one, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Those are definitely times where you feel like you just have to join in, especially if you're the host or something. Like, you don't want to just be the one to not do it. Yeah, I definitely get those. Those are all great examples. So this next activity goes right into cravings.
Very nice segue there. Love it. Yeah, so we're going to talk about cravings. And you all identified some triggers that might have caused cravings at one point or another. And I want you to think of a time now specifically where you've had that craving to drink. So maybe it's one of those situations you've already named, but you didn't drink. Can you think of a situation where that's happened? And if so, would you be willing to share?
Can you say it one more time?
Yeah, absolutely. So you just named a bunch of triggers that may have caused cravings, which is like a really strong desire or urge for alcohol. Can you think of a time that you had that craving to drink, but you didn't drink? So you kind of resisted that craving.
Sorry.
It's a little bit hard for me to think of a specific time, but a lot of times I will not drink. Like if I'm driving home, that's my biggest concern. If I'm at home, which is about an hour away from here, I definitely don't want to drive all the way back here after having really, I mean, pretty much anything to drink. Definitely not anything significant. So that's kind of the situation I'm in a lot. That's kind of why I know that it feels a little awkward to be in that situation. Yeah. As far as just a specific situation, though, it's kind of hard to think of one.
That's okay. Yeah. So, but there have been times that you know exist. Great. Okay. Emily, go ahead.
I think I had it, and then I got so into listening to Paul. I think I've definitely had like really long Mondays, and I'm like, man, I could really go for some alcohol right now. Like I'm talking half a bottle of wine, but that like because it's Monday, I'm like, no, I can't. Like I still stop myself even though I'm like, man, I want that. But yeah, that's where I'm at. Mondays. Hate Mondays.
Yeah, Mondays do suck. But it's awesome. Again, you're also talking about sometimes when you have resisted those cravings, which can be really strong. Cynthia, do you have a time in mind or even a general thing like Paul's?
Yeah, so there's times when I'll think like, oh, a glass of wine sounds really nice or like something else, but then alcohol also hurts my stomach a lot. So then either myself or someone else will be like, oh, do you really want to go through that right now? And we're like, you're right. No, I don't.
Yeah, so you're able to kind of weigh those pros and cons, almost like we did in the first session, but you're doing it very much in the moment. In that moment, are you kind of aware that you're having like a craving or that really strong desire?
Not really, because it's not often that I want alcohol, but it's like, I guess it's usually just, oh, I want something sweet. So like chocolate will do, but I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, so maybe not as much for Cynthia. That's okay. What about Paul, Emily? Do you guys notice those cravings at all?
Not so much for me. I think, like I said, most of mine is situational. I'm more concerned about the consequences of it than anything.
Makes sense.
Did you want me to go in depth on it? Or like was me like yeah, I noticed it.
Yeah, you do. Okay, that's all I need. Yeah. No, sorry, I missed that. It must have lagged. But yeah.
If it was laughing at me.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
Explains that. Yes. Yeah. So Emily's really able to identify those cravings. And maybe right now, Paul, Cynthia, that's just not something that's a huge barrier for your growth and change throughout this program. And that's not a bad thing. But to focus kind of a little bit more on cravings, because even if they're not an issue right now, it might be something that comes up a little later. Cravings pass. They go away after a period of time. They don't just stay around feeling super intense for forever. Kind of like feelings, when we have really strong feelings, it feels like they're going to last forever. And, maybe we'll never not be sad or not be angry. But eventually it does pass, it does subside. And cravings work the same way. They come and go in waves. And if you ever get those really intense cravings, we're going to talk about what we can do instead of just kind of waiting for them to pass. We can do things to distract ourselves. And then that feeling weakens and we kind of experience that craving lessening. And this is called crave surfing, which I just think is fun. And like imagine it in little waves and you're just kind of existing and waiting for it to get a little less. And eventually it does calm down, right? Eventually the ocean chills out and our cravings do the same thing too. We just have to be able to kind of ride that wave until it gets to that point. So Haven is going to go through some strategies that you can use to kind of ride that wave until our cravings get less and less.
All right, so whenever it comes to different strategies, again, we're going to talk about, just like Sammy was saying about the crave searching. Another really great example, though, that we do give, I'm going to relate it to the puppy that we were looking at earlier. So it's just like with alcohol use, it could be like feeding a stray dog or a stray cat. Like you might want to feed this animal because it's cute and it's crying for food or attention. But whenever you start feeding the cat or the dog, it starts to come back and starts to come back for more and for more. And so cravings, whether that be with sweets or Mexican food or alcohol or whatever you want to use as an example, that's how they work. So once you start to feed that, it starts to become a habit. And so that's where it starts to become an issue. So whenever you're able to start seeing, like Emily said, like big time, she can see or feel whenever she's having those cravings. So whenever you start to kind of noticing that, that's where you need to, take more note of it and be cautious of it. And if you're not noticing it, that's totally okay. But I'm sure you're able to relate to something else, like other habits that you do, whether it could be like popping your fingers or whatever you do, biting your nails. But those are all just really good examples for cravings or habits that can be broken easily once you start actually noticing and paying attention to them. So there's not a ton of examples for cravings for you guys because like we talked earlier at the beginning of the session that you didn't have a lot of those issues come up or a lot of those experiences to talk about. But have you ever witnessed cravings with anything else besides alcohol, with anything that I mentioned maybe that have become a habit or that frustrate you and you want to stop doing or anything like that, just so it's a little bit more relatable to this topic?
I think Mexican food was dead on, Haven, or at least food in general.
Yeah.
But Mexican food is a pretty rough weakness.
You crave it sometimes.
Oh man, it's a problem. But yeah, absolutely.
All right, good. That was a good one.
I think I feel that with watching Netflix. I think I have an addiction to watching Netflix. I will literally sit down on my couch and watch Netflix for 6 hours. And my bladder will hurt and I won't get up. I am just the next episode, please. Okay, but yeah, that's my unhealthy habit of the day.
All right, well, that's a great one. It's very time consuming and it sounds like not that great for your body.
Mine would have to be probably chocolate, especially obviously during certain times of the month. I want chocolate. Or Starbucks. There's always times where I'm ooh, I really want some Starbucks right now. But yeah.
Yeah, those are both really good ones. Sounds like all the women in here get the chocolate one for sure. So with that being said, whenever it comes to cravings, it's really important to try to, delay that craving, prolong it for 30 to 60 minutes because more than likely by that time, you'll have forgotten about it or move on to something else. And Emily, especially with your craving that you mentioned, or your habit that you mentioned, it is a very time-consuming habit. So I'm sure that if you were able to, prolong it for 30 minutes by doing homework or going on a walk or something, a little more productive than watching Netflix, you probably won't really be thinking about Netflix by that time.
I think COVID ruined me. I think COVID literally broke me.
I definitely
I'm stuck.
You can do it though. That's what we're learning about, ways to break these habits. Especially in the next 2 sessions, we'll give a lot more tips and everything as well. But so it sounds like everybody has something and can think of ways to maybe, forget about the cravings that you're having. So next is going to be social support. This is obviously a huge part of working around any, bad habits or school or life in general, just having that support system. So a few questions for you guys to, just talk back to me whenever you want to is, do you feel that you have a good amount of social support, friends, families, professors? And can you identify at least one person, like that you can give an example right now to us that is a really good person for you to be able to go to or talk to? Yeah.
So I'm pretty lucky that I'm not from too far away from here, but even more so, one of my best friends since I was 13 is at Lakeview here in town, and just bought a house here in town. So he's definitely one of the people that I can take things to. A few other people, but I think I'm really lucky to have somebody that close. I'm not sure if all the students here have something like that. So he's definitely my support system.
Yeah, a really good friend. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
I guess I have like a pretty good support system. I guess like my roommate, I mean, we have our moments where we hate each other, but like at the end of the day, like I would trust her with anything. So, I mean, like going to her for stuff, maybe not alcohol problems, but if you know what I'm saying. But for like other things, like I know I could go to her and like if it was like something like alcohol, I could go to my grandma or like my boyfriend. He's really cool with talking me through things. I'm good with my support system.
Yeah, that's really awesome to be able to have so many people to be able to talk to in times of need. Cynthia?
Yeah, I have a lot of people that I can talk to. My roommate is like my best friend, so we're really close and we talk all the time. I have a twin and we're close, so I talk to her a lot. And my other best friend goes to school where my twin goes, so I have a lot of people. I also talk to my mom and I have a lot of sisters, so there's a lot of people that I have.
Good. That's awesome that you have that support system too. So realizing those people that are in our life that are there to support us is great for us, of course, and always being there for them, but especially in times of need. So like deciding what to do can be hard sometimes, like no matter the situation. So just having somebody to talk to, it can just really help to be able to elaborate on your thoughts and not just, get in your head. But just by simply identifying those people, can put us ahead and know who to go to in certain times. So on page 20, there's another activity that we're going to do real quick. I believe it's titled Supportive People. It's a chart that says who, what, and how. And I just want you guys to fill out at least one, but if you can do 2, that would be awesome. So who the person is, like what's your relationship, what they're there for, like how they support you, what they're there for, and then how they support you. So what do they do to help you individually? So if you just want to take a minute or 2 to fill out at least one of those. And then if you thought of somebody else after you said your initial person and you want to give that example of that supportive person just to give a variety, that would be perfect. And then if anyone is finished writing down and wants to share, that would be awesome.
So I had the 3 I mentioned.
Mhm.
Like, Alejandro is my boyfriend, and he he's there for moral support, but he also comforts me. Like, if something's going on, he's there to listen to me and comfort me. He'll give me a hug, like an awkward hug, but a hug. So, and then my grandma, she's always wondering what's going on in my life and always telling me she's proud of me. So that's always nice. And then my roommate, she's a good listener and she always supports me in my decisions. So also nice to have.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those are all great examples. And it also shows a different variety of support in different ways that people support you, which is something that's really nice to actually be able to spot out and pinpoint who can help you where.
Yeah, that was kind of nice to do.
I put down 3 people as well. The friend I was talking about, I put down problem solving and moral support for him. He just had a baby and he's in school too, so he's kind of busier than I am, and he's not necessarily somebody I'd be able to call in an emergency because he's just got things to do. I wrote down my dad. He's a little ways away, but he's a big part of my life right now. And for emergencies and moral support, as far as problem solving, maybe not, but definitely for emergencies and moral support. And then I have another friend, actually with the same name. They're both named Zach. But my friend Zach, he's not super close by either, but he's definitely somebody that I talk to almost daily for moral support.
Awesome. Cynthia?
So my roommate is someone that, we talk about everything together. We do basically everything together because of COVID and just everything else. But we talk through things and we listen to each other, and we are both very anxious people, so we usually talk each other through things. And my sister, my twin, we both have we have a strong connection, emotional support, and she's always a constant in my life, and we relate to each other, so we can talk about things that I usually want to talk about to my friends. And my mom is someone that I'd go to if I have problems or emergencies, so she's someone who can give me advice, and she has a lot of life experiences.
Awesome. Those are all great examples of ways that they can support you. Well, I'm so glad that everyone has those good connections. On page 21, I'm not going to read them all, but these just show different examples too. If you do want to think more in depth of what do my friends or family or people around me bring to my life, and are they helping me in these situations? They just have some good examples. One that I really like that relates very well to this class, it says, list the people you know who don't drink and spend more time with them in places where you have never drank. So that's a good way to just get out of the normal routines and habits with drinking, is to, reach out to those people around you who don't drink or who you haven't been out with, and go to places that you haven't normally drink at. And that's just one that's really relatable to this class. But all of the other examples are really great too.
All right, so we've got one final kind of topic to cover today. And I'm going to assign some homework with it so that we can be sure to let you out of here on time. But we're going to talk a little bit about planning ahead and how important that is for behavior change. Because alcohol use can really become a part of our routine, even if it's not our daily routine. Like Emily talked about Mondays, that is a day that routinely is really long, and really leaves her with a strong craving. Thank you for giving us a really good example. And it's important to recognize those routines because it just happens automatically, right? You don't notice that maybe you're getting up and brushing your teeth because you just do that every day. And alcohol use can work the same way. But some choices may kind of lead us down those automatic paths, and we may not recognize it immediately. So hanging out with certain friends that usually drink, or maybe if we usually drink in a certain place or after doing a certain activity, like maybe while we're watching TV or playing drinking games or anything like that, that can kind of trigger that routine in our brain and cause us to want to drink alcohol. So what we can do is identify those situations beforehand and decide whether or not we want to put ourselves in those situations. And then it can really help set us up for success later on. On page 12 of the workbook, you don't have to turn there, or it's not page 12, but in the workbook it talks about stop, act, and decide. Is that even on with this? Haven, do you know what page that's on? I'm looking for it, and I can't find it.
Page 22.
Thank you. Appreciate you. Yeah, so we're looking, perfect. We're looking at page 22, which is a strategy that's really simple. Stop, ask, and decide. So stop, take a minute, take in your surroundings and what maybe your plans are. Ask yourself, am I in a place to kind of go through with these plans? Might it lead me to do something that doesn't align with my goals and values? And then decide, what do you want to do? It's a really great decision-making model, and we're going to kind of use it later as well when we talk more about problem solving. And this can be really helpful when we're doing those things like crave surfing and deciding whether or not we want to distract ourselves or do something different. Using the stop, ask, decide method helps us kind of take a step back from our actions in the current moment. In order to kind of practice this beforehand and practice some of this planning ahead, I want you to go to page, I have this page, we're going to go to page 19, and it says my help plan. And you can see an example of one of these triggers or high risk situation where someone might be more likely to drink, which is coming home after work. And then they have a strategy or plan, so something they can do instead of their typical routine that will make it less likely for them to drink or drink like they usually do. I will assign this for homework. However, I want you to practice it. So I want you to think of one trigger high risk situation for you, and then one strategy or plan that you could use to kind of combat that routine and kind of that automatic thinking that you have in your head. Do you have any examples? So one like routine or typical place that you usually drink, and then one strategy where you could either distract yourself or do something different.
So, like I said, a big thing for me is if friends come over or something like that when I feel like I should drink with them. If we just basically plan to have some activity that doesn't necessarily involve drinking, that would really, like an outdoor activity, going out to the lake and walking the trails or anything like that that doesn't necessarily involve drinking, it wouldn't be nearly as much of a problem.
Yeah, that's a great example. Absolutely. Emily, any ideas?
I guess like for my Monday thing, I usually for one, the reason the Mondays are so long is because I have cheer 7 to 9. So like I don't even get home till 9, but then I have to wake up at 6:37 the next morning. So like I guess keeping myself busy usually keeps me, distracted enough. And then like Paul said, having a plan for other things to do, like other than drinking, is like a safe way to prepare not to drink. I think if you have free time, like most people are like, hey, you want to go get a beer? Like, that avoids that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you both for coming up with examples and some great strategies to kind of replace drinking. And that's something that we're definitely going to talk about. Different ways you can fill that free time that can really lead to the situations where you want to drink. With that being said, I am just going to assign you to come up with 2 more triggers and strategies for change associated with that. Because that'll be your only homework along with continuing the participant journal for this week. That being said, Haven, do we have anything else or are we good to go?
No, I think that's pretty much it for today's session.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for participating. And we'll see you next week.